as I said at the beginning, this is your conference, and while I can ask questions of the panel, I think it would be great if some of the questions came from the floor.
Hello, good morning. My name is Assam Al-Taneji, Adnoclinus Advisor Operation. Thank you for your insights, information. My question is to Mr. Mark. You did mention that only 15 yards are available for the retrofit, where Dr. Ibrahim mentioned between 2013 up to now, it's 113 yards across the world. Where does LR fit and way forward to increase the retrofit or new technologies down the line? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, I think the questioner was referring to a report which came out recently, which was looking specifically at dual fuel retrofitting, just for clarification. Incidentally, I'm not just giving a plug, it is a very interesting read. So if you haven't read it, it's available on the website. But Mark, I don't know if you wanted to ask the question that the gentleman raised.
Yeah, sure. And just to address the disparity between the figures mentioned. So I think Ibrahim's graph was looking at new build yards. The 130 odd figures was new build yards. In our report, it's looking at or assessing the capability and recommending that there are only 15 yards from a retrofit, pure retrofit perspective. Because clearly we acknowledge that retrofitting can be across the spectrum of the fuels that an owner might want to retrofit to. So whether that's retrofitting to methanol, whether it's LNG, whether it's to ammonia, whether it's to fuel cells. So you need to have that capability, but more importantly, you need to have that ecosystem around the yard to be able to supply and support that retrofit. As I said in my speech, those of you that have done retrofits before will have experienced that they're often approached in a very one-off manner, i.e., we've got this one ship and we need to retrofit it, and invariably the retrofits that I've been involved in are over budget and take a lot longer than initially envisaged. All that comes down to having a turnkey ecosystem around the facility that ultimately is going to pull that together. And key to retrofitting, as I said, is about the project management, and therefore we've within the report recommend that there's only really 15 yards around the world that have that capability or could have that capability.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, I think I've read the report, and I think it poses the question. There's a shortage of yard capacity. What are we going to do about it? Did LR come up with any answers? What would your recommendation be to the industry as a whole? What needs to be done?
It's really interesting because to answer that question as well, you've got to consider in the background what's happening in new construction. We saw when new construction was in that 30-year low that a lot of yards, or some yards, particularly in China, would sort of switch between being a new con yard versus being a retrofit yard to maintain a profit. The challenge that we've got, and particularly when we're talking about peak retrofitting by 2033, is that we know that the yards, even the new con yards, are full till 2027, and the yards that are repair yards in China are also, if they haven't done already, looking to join the new con business gravy train, should we say, because that's a much clearer future. They can see that in front of them, whereas retrofitting at scale hasn't really started to evolve within the industry. So it's difficult to set the business case out in terms of we're going to convert our yard to retrofitting at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to come now to Ibrahim Datiri as a representative of a shipyard on the panel. Obviously, Oman Dry Dock, one of the biggest yards in the Middle East, heavily involved in repair. Do you think there's a business case for expanding in terms of retrofits? And what's your thinking at Oman Dry Dock in this context?
It's the best shipyard in the region. That's Oman Dry Dock. Okay, well, the way I see it, actually, it's for a shipyard to work, of course, putting in mind that the SCI shipyard is there. We have already started, as a matter of fact, doing some work when it comes to retrofitting. Albeit we haven't yet touched the fuel part, but we did start with from the propeller side of the ship, the hull side in terms of hull optimization, in terms of applying the nano paint to the ship, in terms of making sure that the engines themselves, they are being upgraded within the shipyard. So there is capabilities that can be always developed within shipyards. And we, as shipyards, I understand that, as well as all our colleagues shipyards here in the region, we can do this job. It's not challenging, the work itself, but it's the volume that we will be basically a little bit concerned of, because as Mark mentioned, at one point of time, we will be having around 13,000 ships that needs to be retrofitted between now and 2026. Will the shipyards around the region or around the world even be able to cater for that number of ships? This is a question that needs to be really asked. So this is how I look at it.
I mean, from my perspective, it looks like there's a sound business case for yards to invest, to expand, to invest in infrastructure. It's a big decision. Do you think we're close to that point where, because the other point that came from those graphs is how dependent we are on China, and I'm not making a political point here, it's just a statement of fact. Is there a case for areas outside China to be being bold and investing in additional capacity?
There's a big business case for the shipyards, and I'm sure that all the shipyards here in the region, they're getting themselves equipped for this challenge. We're doing so in Duqm. We are upgrading our facility in order to basically cater for this challenge. And it's also to prove that we can do these things here regionally. We don't need to go all the way to China. We can do it within, well, if I may say, it's better quality, perhaps the same time, and maybe within the same budget. I wouldn't say cheaper than China, but we can do it within the same budget. So this can all be done, and there is a good business case for the shipyards to basically cater for these things.
Okay. Emil, I'm trying to make a leap here, so bear with me. But one of the points made in the LR report is the need for yards to have experience with fuel handling. When you're moving into ammonia and LNG, you're moving into a very different perspective. Ports like Sohar have a long history or a relatively long history or experience, and certainly some of the shareholders in the port have a long experience of handling ammonia, LNG. Is there a case for the port sector, the terminal sectors and the shipyard sectors working together more closely to build up that expertise?
I truly believe that is the case. Of course, Sohar, we're handling ammonia and methanol as we speak, not so much as a fuel, but it's being produced and it's being handled. Of course, we have a close link with the Port Rotterdam being one of the shareholders, and we take their experience, their best practices, their safety rules and regulations close at heart, and we follow those, and we implement those, and we're working closely together with Asyat. And that's the beauty of where I sit, with such great and experienced and strong partners. We can draw and learn from these best practices, and we get stronger in our offering. And that's also what I was in my presentation, of course, that we're building out this position. And I do believe that sharing of information, sharing knowledge, it's a sidestep that I'm making now, but for instance, earlier this week, we signed the so-called Sohar Net Zero Alliance with all our tenants. And in those, OQ, Vale, Jindal Shadid, very big, strong companies who have their own ambitions or their own interests and are strong enough to make their own steps in the future. Still, we sat together and said, okay, let's get together and share information, share best practices, share communication. Because in this field where we're going through now, what we're facing now, there's so many unknowns and so many roads that will lead to maybe a better future. that you cannot do it on your own. So you need to work together, and you need to be more sharing of information and stay close to each other.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I'm working with the Pentacontinent Fleet Manager, and I'm also with Onyx GMCC Director Project. My question is from Mr. Mark, that you must be having a good team in yards. We had a recently meeting with the 2 yards of Korea. They were in our office on 1st and 2nd, and we are interested to build 2 ships with the ammonia carrier and an ammonia engine ready. Yards are only forcing us, we should book the slot, and they cannot commit that they can give us the engine ready. And we also contact the major engine manufacturers also. They also cannot commit the engine ready is available now. So ammonia, the yard is only interested that we should sign a contract with them, and then 27 or 28, maybe the chances are there that we may get ammonia engine ready. We already operating 3 LR2, which are 2 years old, and 3 are about 12 years old ships. So this is my question, that yard, what is your team saying in Korea or China?
I think the gentleman was asking about his interaction with yards, and when you come to them with your proposals, their reaction is not always positive. Is that, or there are issues? How can LR and other stakeholders work together with some ship owners to make that transition?
Yeah, I think our relationship, and I think the industry's relationship, and to the collaboration point, has changed quite significantly since 2018. I think it's fair to say, before the energy transition and what we're trying to achieve in terms of decarbonising shipping, the industry was very reactive, and it was very prescriptive when it came to regulation. So basically, rules and regulations were written either by the IMO or class societies. Ship owners would then wait for the due date, and then they would do something about it. But with all the challenges that emerged with the energy transition, equally there are a whole load of opportunities. And we learned quite quickly that we had to move into a goal-based and risk-based regime. And to be able to address those challenges, it can't just be a relationship between the class society and the shipyard anymore. To be able to get the first deep-sea ammonia-fueled ship into the water, we started that project in 2018. And it did start with Samsung. But between LR and Samsung, we quite quickly realized that we didn't know if an engine would be available. Neither of us knew whether ammonia would be available. We didn't know if ports would accept it. So quite quickly, we brought into that collaboration project and into the workshops the engine manufacturer, the MPA, Yara, one of the world's biggest fuel suppliers, to be able to answer the technical questions that we needed to effectively do a goal-based and risk-based design. And we've used that model, and we've continued in that sort of vein as a relationship to make sure that for those owners that do want to go first and do want to have the first ammonia ship or the first hydrogen ship or indeed the first nuclear SMR ship, that we have the right people in the room asking the right questions when we are trying to solve some of these technical and also techno-commercial challenges. Because actually what we're finding is it isn't the technical challenge, it's more the commercial challenge that is inhibiting making a lot of these decisions. So in terms of the engine, yes, there were some delays in the 60-bore engine for that project. The engine is now back on track. Will be delivered around the middle of 2025 to the project that will be delivered in 2026. And equally, I can see my colleague in front of me from Wärtsilä. Equally, we've got projects and agreements in principles with other engine manufacturers as well, looking both from a retrofit perspective, but also looking from a 2-stroke and 4-stroke perspective, whether it's methanol, whether it's ammonia, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's into a fuel cell. So In the background, yes, there's a lot of development, but it's important to the earlier comment that those developments aren't done in isolation. They need to be done with 3 or 4 parties that are associated with the ecosystem of getting that ship into the water.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Tyagi, I don't know if did you want to respond to that? I mean, as a ship owner, perhaps you've had similar conversations or you have your own perspective on this issue.
Thank you. In fact, exactly this is the point I was trying to make as a ship owner. Amount of uncertainty we are. Here is a ship owner who is ready to place the order with the yard, and yard is in a situation, in demanding situation. They are saying, the ship owner, you can block the yard, you can block the space, sign the contract, but I'm not sure the technology or engine will be available. So this is all challenges for all ship owners, and uncertainty, challenges, and where maybe the building yards and with the help of the classification societies, maybe the final solution may come. But this is the real ground challenges for all ship owners. Thank you.
Yeah. And I guess, I'm not a ship owner obviously, but I guess from a yard's point of view, they would like to see a series production and they don't just want somebody coming along and ordering one ship. I mean, is that something that you feel is an issue, the uncertainty and therefore the inability of ship owners and yards to come to scale agreements, as it were?
I certainly agree with that. And shipyards also wants to use us or use the ship owners to market them, basically. It's a promotion thing. It's marketing. So if a shipyard signs a contract for building a ship that is fueled with ammonia, they will make a big noise about it. But then the fact is, the ship is not going to be there. And we don't even know when it's going to be built. But then it's a strategy for the shipyards. I mean, at the end of the day, they need to survive. And when I say out, I mean, right now we have only 131 active shipyards. They need to survive, and we need them to survive as well. So we need to support them. I mean, it's a little bit of a contradicting statement, but we need to support the shipyards as well. I think if we can live without a ship, ammonia-fueled ship, from now till 2027, but then give the opportunity to the shipyard to market that they are doing it, then I think we should go for it. This is the way it should be done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Captain Oberoi, and I work for a UK-based liability insurer. So I would like to bring, we spoke about shipyards, we spoke about the ship owner's perspective. We represent the chartering community, and we insure people who basically charter ships. And we often get the question is that, the BIMCO clauses are owner-friendly, and they look to pass on liability towards the charterer when it comes to damage to the ship's engine with fuels. So my question is directed to Mark, and have you done any research on what is the probability of a ship's engine getting damaged with these alternate fuels, or have there been any reported cases as such with LR where the ship's damaged due to ammonia or LNG fuel or similar? Because that is going to be ultimately paid by the operator or the charterer of the vessel, if he gets into a contract with the ship owner. So I just want to bring up an insurance angle to it, and over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. Traditionally, as you might imagine with conventional fuels, LR, like a lot of organizations, keep databases of defects and is able to do statistic analysis of when damages occur. That then for us, we feed back into the loop in terms of our own rule development. Now, for a lot of the energy transition and a lot of the technology, it's the first time that we've seen that technology, or at least the first time that we've seen that technology being used in a maritime context. Because if you take things like carbon capture, of course, carbon capture is used quite extensively ashore, but take that carbon capture unit, put it on a ship, and it's a completely different environment. So the way that we deal with that goes back to what I was explaining before. We bring in the engine manufacturer and the designer, the shipyard, in a much earlier stage in terms of the acceptance criteria. So we're understanding and in fact working together on the design basis, trying to get those risks down to as low as practically possible. And yes, we do the normal extensive shop tests and work really with the OEMs, and again, I'm looking at Varsila sitting in front of me here, work with them, because equally it's not just the risk associated with the failure or the casualty from an insurance or from an LR perspective, but it's also the reputation of the OEM's piece of technology. So all of us working together to make sure that before that is installed on board, that we're all satisfied with the risk, and risk obviously being a function of consequence and probability.
Okay. I'd just like to bring Steve and Kunza in at this point. The point generally was around the relationship between charterer and retrofitted vessel, or a company that has retrofitted a vessel. What's your perception? You're out there in the market talking to potential charterers and so on. What are the conversations that you're having, and how receptive are they to the idea of taking on a vessel that's been significantly modified or upgraded?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the charterer. Major oil companies, they're looking at these alternative fuels, and ships have been retrofitted. The vast majority of charterers are not. A lot of them have got their head in the sand, and they're waiting for some sort of direction or certainty. Most of the charterers we engage with, particularly in our ships, are in the latter camp.
Hi there. My name is Mohammed Imran. I work for Shell in the LNG trading arm, managing a portfolio that's focusing on marine LNG. So this is my first time here. Great to see all these people. My question, I guess, is to Mark and maybe also to Dr. Ibrahim. Also, a quick reflection, Emil, great to see that Sohar is looking at LNG bunkering. Obviously, Shell's a proponent of LNG bunkering, and we're doing it actively today. I'm just curious about methanol and how it's obviously coming to light. When I look at, obviously I'm biased towards LNG bunkering. I'm just curious to understand, how do you see the credentials of methanol on its journey as a ship owner to get you decarbonized? And the second reflection I have is in regards to ammonia. I get the credentials in regards to e-ammonia, but what about the toxicity challenges? So it'd be good to hear your views. Thank you.
Well, Mark, yeah, so the two fuels were highlighted there, and I think I think you made the point that there's not likely to be a dominant fuel, and I guess these are the issues that have to be addressed. But
yeah, sure. So, well, firstly on methanol, we've seen a lot of, we've seen some recent ordering of methanol-fueled ships. I think Maersk has just over 20 on order and has just taken delivery of their first one. Methanol today, methanol's available, and Maersk spent a lot of time ensuring, and I think they've got 7 or 8, I don't know if there's anybody from Maersk in the room, they've got around 7 different suppliers to supply that route that their methanol containing ships will work on. But ultimately, from our report, methanol will only account for 8%, because what happens in shipping is that we effectively get costed out of the methanol fuel supply game. Let's not forget, we're not the only industry that's decarbonising at the moment. The agricultural industry, aviation industry, motor industry, every industry is looking to decarbonise. And whilst, today methanol and for Maersk and their ESG makes sense, ultimately for a scaled solution for 60, 70,000 ships in the water, we get priced out of that game, and aviation takes over. On your point on ammonia, and as I say, e-ammonia within that hydrogen pathway will account for around 35% of future fuels going forward. I think toxicity of ammonia is around about 5 parts per million, whereas for methanol it's around 1,500 parts per million. So it's extremely toxic in very, very small quantities, obviously. And as much as we can work on the ship design, and in terms of even having separate engine rooms, of course you have double wall piping. What's emerging from the project that we're working on within ammonia are 2 things, really. If you look at the seafarers that will be operating on ammonia-fueled ships, whether that's e-ammonia or ammonia, we will need to train about 750,000 seafarers to even understand, basic understanding of the toxicity of ammonia. But as we saw with LNG, and let's not forget, we transport ammonia today, but it's done on LPG carriers. But we saw when we started bringing LNG carriers into places like Singapore and into San Francisco and places like this, and doing LNG bunkering, to your point, and you'll probably know this a lot better than me, it's actually the ecosystem that you need to worry about more than what is happening on the ship, because you can have the hardware safe, you can train the people on board the ship, but actually when it comes to the risk associated with any leak, then it's the ecosystem. It's the people that are bunkering the ship. It's the ports that are receiving the ship. It's the local neighborhood that the ship will come into to understand what types of ship are very close to their apartments or to their villas. So that's what's emerging, and that's the challenge that we have as an industry when we start talking about some of these more exotic fuels.
Dr. Al-Naderi, I think the question could be picked up by yourself. There were, ammonia was mentioned, methanol was mentioned, LNG was mentioned. We're moving from a world where there was almost like a single fuel, although it was obviously different divisions of that fuel, and now we're having this multiplicity. What does it mean for, when you're sitting in a boardroom, what does it mean for your planning in terms of how you move forward with in this new world?
Well, that is the direction, basically. For us, actually, as Asad Shipping, we are thinking of, we are now in discussion for a project where we will have methanol fuel tankers. So yes, it's the direction for the industry. And maybe Mohammed, as you have clearly mentioned, you are kind of biased to the LNG, but but then it's ammonia or methanol or any other chemical fuel. I think we should not be afraid of trying these things. Of course, with the right measures, with the right policies, with the right codes. I mean, we have it when the gas initially came. There was an equal concern about how dangerous the LNG is. And then, of course, we had the IGC code that could work with this thing. Now, of course, I mean, with the new fuels and new green fuels in total, whether it's toxic or non-toxic, that's something can be regulated by having the right code and by having the right regulations that can regulate this industry itself.
Okay. Thank you very much. The mention there was an ecosystem. I suppose that brings neatly to the two port terminal operator representatives on the panel. Again, when in recent years you've had tank storage essentially for a very relatively few number of fuels. The future looks much more complicated. How do you see that from a port and terminal operator point of view?
As I said during my presentation, we have to make sure that we're ready for the industry, and that means that we're following, in a sense that we might be following but ahead of the market, so that we're ready when the market is ready. So we just have to deal with it. And that's why I also said you need state-of-the-art infrastructure, but also being flexible in it, so that you can move with the market, on the waves of the market. And of course, you have to be ready to work like with ammonia and LNG. We will be bunkering LNG. We learned from what has happened in Rotterdam. Rotterdam worked very closely with all the authorities, but also with CMA, for instance, that were thinking of investing in an LNG-propelled fueled vessel. And together, rules and regulations, policies, way of working was developed. And that's also what we are going through now. And we have to be ready, whether it's ammonia, methanol, LNG, bio, whatever you name it. We have to be ready for that.
Do you think that in the future ports like Sohar will have a whole range of, or will you specialise in do we see ourselves developing a network of LNG bunker ports, methanol bunker ports, but they might be not the same ones, or do you think it will all be a single provision?
Our aim is to be that one-stop shop. So whatever you like, you can have it in our port. Okay. That's our aim. I'm not sure.
Mr. Al-Rahman, we haven't heard from DP World. I just wondered, did you want to say something about DP World's perspective on providing the fuels of the future for tanker clients? And what are your plans for the future?
Of course, as DP World, we always look at it as a platform, and we look at the whole supply chain from production to storage to supplies to bunkering, and the whole platform is regulated. It has to be based on safety, environment, and other transportation and logistical restrictions. Now, the shift from the current, whether it's facilities or whether it's technologies, we are talking about the shift. Until now, there is a gray area where the maritime industry is going to. As a port operator, we always make sure that the port users have the supplies they require and they have the facilities they require for all of their rotations. However, until now, there is no exact direction whether the next energy supply will be LNG or it will be hydrogen. But whatever the whole industry goes to, or the shift, definitely DP World will be the first ports to set up the facilities for the port users.
Okay, thank you very much.
My name is Riyad Belaid, works for Wärtsilä Services Switzerland as General Manager, Two-Stroke Sales, Middle East and Asia. I have a question to ship owners. As Dr. Ibrahim mentioned, IMO introduced these regulations for good reasons. However, these are not for free, as you said, costly. But still, the owners want to comply with these regulations and invest. But the investment is quite high. So even when you consider to, for example, apply some of these measures like retrofitting the main engines to cope with the new future fuels, or to apply one of these energy saving devices, whatever, these have cost. So when you approach your chartering party, and can you please, to share these costs of these investments, can you please share their views? Because they are also paying for the fuel, so they are benefiting, because all these measures will lead to fuel consumption reductions. And in the meantime, of course, when it comes to CII rating, it will be improved. Thank you.
Perhaps shall I start with Captain Tyagi? I think you perhaps haven't had the opportunity to speak. Do you want to say something about that, about the conversations with charterers? Is there going to be a premium, or is there going to be a saving for charterers? I guess that's the question: is how transparent can you be with charterers in these discussions?
Yeah. See, when we do any negotiation with any charterer to fix our vessel, definitely if vessel is going to use the clean fuel, it has got a capability, and there is a availability of this clean fuels. Definitely we as a ship owner, we get the premium for this. There is no doubt in this. In this current market conditions, charterer is giving the premium to the ship owners. But finally, in the long run, market will settle. It will depend who will bear this cost. Finally, if you look at this, this cost will go to the end customers. Maybe if it is a container vessel, some goods is moving from point A to point B. Finally, ship owner, charterer, finally it will go to the end user. But at the moment, to answer your question, yes, currently we as a ship owners, if we have a good rating category of the vessels, and if we have got the clean fuel on the vessels, this is benefiting the charterer, and in turn we are getting the premium for this.
Stephen, at the end there, I wouldn't want to leave you out there. Do you have any comments on the question that was raised?
Yeah, thank you. At the end of the day, we're in a negotiated free market. So the charterer will have to pay the cost. The ship owner is not going to run his ships forever at a loss. So the charterer bears the cost at the end of the day. We are, what we do, we're fairly transparent with our charter, saying this is going to cost X, and if you give us a charter of Y period, then we can mutually share the cost.
Thank you. Can everybody hear the answers? I'm having a bit of trouble hearing, but you can hear the answers, okay. Dr. Ibrahim, I think the question was also partly directed at yourself, and you might have some particular perspectives.
Well, quickly, I think, well, right now we've started to experience a good and continuous and committed approach from the charters to basically go for the upgraded engines, retrofitted engines, and they're also willing to join hands with the ship owners by having long-term charters. And this is basically, I think, one of the major attributes to this one is the EU ETS, where the emission trading scheme, of course, where the charters also wanted to be seen that they are contributing to the implementation of the carbon credit policy, and they want to have their own carbon credit by having a long-term charter of ships with upgraded engines. So yes, there is, at least I'm talking here about the ships that are being traded to the European and the US part. The charters who are trading ships towards the east are still trying to come out of that sort of commitment. So there is quite a split, but I think the relationship between the ship owners and the charters at this stage is moving in the right direction and it's becoming healthier.
Thank you very much.
Captain Turkish Shehri, I'm the Managing Director of National Maritime Academy in Saudi Arabia, appointed by Saudi Aramco, who created this non-profit entity to address this new requirement and existing requirement. Now, as mentioned by Dr. Ibrahim, lots of new mandates and requirements by Mark as well, that ship owners need to adapt to this new requirement. And sometimes it's not easy, and the future is not really clear what type of fuel and what type of energy. Now the suffering goes to the training bodies, mentioned twice by Mark and Dr. BK, how we train now new generation, what we focus on as training entities. What we are trying to do is to partner with the owners of the new technologies and make sure that at least we have access to the know-how from these entities. The only issue that sometimes it's very hard because it's like patented designs or very hard to access to the know-how. So what is the industry or IMO is doing to support training industries to make sure that we are ready to support the maritime industry ahead of time? Because training comes first and it needs to be done now in order to be ready for the future.
So then who wants to take on that question? Mark, did you want to reply? I mean, I think the question was around the IMO and preparing for the future. Training, was it training? And
it is the training and how we make sure that academies or colleges are ready with the module, the training requirement, to make sure that officers that are graduating today ready to immediately serve the new technologies when they join.
Yeah, so I think it's both about making sure that the human capacity is there as well as other requirements.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're absolutely correct. I think what we've seen very recently is the emergence of quite a number of private training facilities to sort of address a problem, as you've addressed, a problem that we know is coming. And to be honest, quite what we're seeing in terms of the energy transition is that a lot of private companies are actually going ahead of anything that IMO or any regulatory body can write down. You will know as well just how long it takes, whether it's ballast water treatment, whether it's ISPS, whatever regulation it is, just how long it takes to get that regulation through 176 different governments at the IMO, I think we're on now. I think just to add to that, as well as the private facilities, you know, and it's great that Aramco have set up to support that. We have to think about other regulations that the IMO is responsible for and is working on. So, you know, I think it's fair to say when you look at STCW, it is long overdue a rewrite, and absolutely needs to be addressed in terms of the energy transition and supporting safe seafarers and safe seafaring. I think the other interesting thing that's happening as well in parallel is the IMO and IACS are working on the theory of prevention is often better than cure. And by that I mean, you know, there are a number of accelerants in the autonomous shipping space. And we know and continue to hear at conferences like this just how difficult it is to attract people into maritime, let alone attract them into maritime, then become seafarers, or attract them into maritime and come and work for Lloyd's or come and work for Aramco. So as an industry, we're really struggling to bring people into the industry. So we've got to think, how can we use technology to support some of those activities that previously have been delivered by humans, and autonomous shipping regulations are being developed to address some of that.
Captain Tyagi, I mean, obviously, the Shipping Corporation of India has got a long track record of training seafarers and being involved in this process. Is that a question that you feel you'd like to answer?
Yeah, I would like to just add to what Mr. Mark said. See, the training, in fact, this risk is already identified by IMO. And it's a major risk. Finally, whatever we do, IMO make the regulations, classification societies pass those, administration pass those regulations to the ship owners. Finally, seafarer who is going to operate the machinery, who is going to do the maintenance of the machinery, that individual seafarer has to be competent enough to do this job safely. In this training, there are a couple of stakeholders. The most important, naturally, as a ship owner, we have to ensure this. And in this, OEM will play the major role. OEM, they know their technology, they know their machinery, so they have to come forward. We are collaborating with them and with the supervision of the classification societies. So these 2-3 stakeholders has to come together and ensure that individual seafarer is trained. So these 4-5 parties, we have to make sure that end results and the seafarer is ready to operate this machinery. Risk again here with the even OEM, let me put it this way. They're also at the stage of developing this new technology, new engines. And in the pressure of this IMO regulations, there is a pressure from all directions on the ship owners and on the OEM also to develop and deliver these engines which are not yet ready and going to be ready in a couple of years. So the experience with the OEM also to operate and know-how of this new machineries technology is also very limited. So this is a further risk added, and this all we have to take into account when we are designing our training modules for this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Aykut Soydan. I'm Marine Sales Manager of Middle East, responsible for lubricants indeed. My question is to Dr. Ibrahim, maybe also to Stefan, is how comfortable do you feel yourself as an operator or ship owner on the preparation of alternative fuels of the producers as well as energy companies in terms of networking as well as availability for these alternative fuels in order to kick you out a bit more to make these transitions rapidly?
Well, thank you, Sadisan. As of now, I think it's the more confidence is on the LNG side. It's, of course, because of more network, more facilities, and also the industry is becoming more adherent to this fuel. For the other fuel alternatives, it is still a bit too early to say. We as operators, we think it's going to take some time, and the journey is not going to be easy, but the train has already left the station, so we are there.
Okay. Does anybody else want to come in on that one? Emil, I mean, I suppose as it's talking about the security of bunker supplies and confidence in order to go forward. What's your perspective? I mean, have we still got some way to go before the landside sector is ready to meet the needs of the tanker industry, or are we making progress quite rapidly?
As I said before, I think we are following the industry, but we are trying to follow, and that sounds like a paradox, just a bit ahead of the game. Of course, we're following the discussions, we're following the developments, we're following the technological developments, and we want to make sure that we're ready once the market is ready. So a lot needs to be done, but it is being done as we speak. So we will be ready when the market is ready.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess it's a bit of a chicken and egg sort of situation here, isn't it? But
Engineer Abdullah Blouchi from Siyat Shipping. I'm coming from the point where Mr. Piquet started that all stakeholders come together. So this is the point now. Every stakeholder is talking about that we are ready, we are making arrangement coming to the market. But how the communication can bring together in the same table that ensure yards, ports, shipping owners sit together and make same idea that or chain of operations to ensure that there is no gap when we are really implementing new technologies or new fuel in operations. Thank you.
I don't know, Captain Tanagi, do you want to take that one up?
Yes, sure. See, finally, IMO, they have identified this risk. I'm repeating this. In India perspective, I'll give this. Director General of Shipping, they are our regulator. They have also taken note of this risk. And they have given instructions to various maritime institutes to develop the small modular courses for this purpose. Now, again, the responsibility lies on the ship owners. Finally, we have to get it done. We have to run our ships. So we have to take, again, OEM, seafarer, classification societies, all stakeholders, get this course developed and impart this knowledge to the seafarers. Now, coming to this, how we can do, one way is we do as individual ship owners, or we go at a nation level or maybe regional level, or the best part can be if there are different OEMs, there are very few reputed OEMs. This topic can be taken even at IMO level, sir. So this change, this training part, it can come from the IMO itself and then various ship owners for respective OEM, respective engine or the respective technology. Then it can be implemented in a very standardized form. Otherwise, ship owners will do the different ways. There will be gaps, and as you said very correctly, then chances of accident and the further risk will be more. So to have the uniform system of training for a particular engine type, then best would be this information can flow from the topmost level, IMO or the country regulatory authorities. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Stan Machilas from Wärtsilä.
Can you speak a little bit closer? Yeah, thanks. That's fine.
Yes, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Good. So I'm Stan Machilas from Wärtsilä. My business is two-stroke decarbonization solutions, so retrofits of existing engines to improve efficiency or convert to future fuels. So you can imagine that all the topics discussed here are hitting very close to home. And first a statement that the weight is not only on the repair yards, I think to increase capacity, the whole of the value chain needs to work in this direction. So we've embarked on, or let's say we started converting, doing large conversions about a year ago. And we very quickly realized that it's not an easy job. So we had to deliver 26 containers of parts in a very short time at the repair yard. And then we saw all the limits of the supply chain. Which led us also to develop our own internal large projects team that looks into streamlining all this process. And a part of it is working with the yards and striking agreements, perhaps, so that we can also ensure that there is a slot planning capability, and that we can also ensure that all the value chain works together from the manufacturers of parts to us as technology developers, and also the yards. But I have a question towards Dr. Ibrahim, because one of the feedbacks we get from yards, from repair yards, is that traditionally you've been struggling to hold on to skilled personnel and kind of losing them to new build, to the new build industry, because it was more lucrative, or let's say more technically complex to be challenging for these highly skilled people. But from my perspective, I see a light in this tunnel, because now the retrofit business is about to get very, very interesting. So the first question is of mine is: do you agree with that, and do you see a potential to attract more skilled talent in your part of the industry? And the second one is what Mark mentioned earlier about customers looking for turnkey solutions, which is another challenge for us. We're not used as a technology provider to, let's say, agree on EPC projects or turnkey solutions. And there again, it would be a subject of discussion with or agreement with the shipyards. But from the owner's perspective, is this true that you would look for a single point of contact in this sort of projects and a turnkey solution? Thank you.
Okay, so I think there were two questions there. One was around the staffing and the ability to retain suitable skilled staff within shipyards, and the competitive pressures, and whether the new era of hopefully a retrofit boom might change things. I think that's the summary.
So I'll answer the first one, Stama. So it's basically a competition will always be there between shipyards. We work together, but we also compete against each other. That is, it's the nature of the industry. People will continue to move between the shipyards, but then I think it's more of a trend that they will move between the repair yards, because here in the region we have more, of course, it's mainly repair yards rather than shipbuilding yards or new build yards. But then it's also the duty of the shipyards to retain their people by basically providing them with the right incentives to stay, and by giving them the right training, as mentioned by my colleague from Saudi Arabia here. There's a need for the right training, so that we have a pool of trained people who can actually manage. Even if we lose 1 or 2% here and there, we can always manage to sustain the business. And at the same time, incentivize the people to stay. And perhaps also amongst us as ship repair yards, we need to have a better dialogue and start to see how we can work with each other instead of just competing with each other. There are areas where we actually need to sit across the table and discuss issues that can actually result in all of us benefiting from the same thing by retaining the right talents.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Captain Tyagi, I think the point was there around do ship owners value having a single point of contact? I guess this is around turnkey project, turnkey management. Is it best to deal with lots of different people or just one? I mean, did you have a response to that?
I can just give information about our company, Shipping Corporation of India. We have got a dedicated team selected for this purpose, and they are coordinating with various shipyards, and they are the single point of contact. Idea is to do systematic planning, and they are in touch with the OEMs, they are in touch with the shipyards, and they are in touch with the fleet personnel department of the company for the seafarers training purpose also.
And Stephen, I mean, I haven't asked you for a while, so from Lilo's point of view, how do you like to work with the value chain as it was described?
Depends to an extent on the project, but generally, as Captain Tyagi said, we have our own dedicated team of engineers and new building and professionals. So we tend to bring all parties together in the yard, rather than relying on one single point of contact.
Yeah. But just an observation in response to the first question. I think one of the slides showed how many yards have been lost since the 2009, I think it was. Presumably there are significant numbers of workers who used to have these skills, who were trained, and who are working somewhere else. And I think maybe that's an answer that if you look at the UK, obviously we used to have a lot more shipyards than we do now, and there is a hidden level of expertise there, which I think members might wish to think about.
Thank you very much. Very insightful discussion, very informative. It's not a question as such, but my name is Ibrahim Bihiri. I'm the managing director of WinGD in the Middle East. We are the OEM two-stroke. Just to cover some of the questions that come up there, I mean, you talked a lot about safety, challenges, seafarer, which is the concern of all of us in the industry. Thank you very much. I like what Dr. Ibrahim has mentioned, Captain Tiagi, Mark, about training of seafarer. I think this is a challenge. And now we're facing new technologies, we're facing the stress and pressure of the legislation, which have a deadline we need to meet with. Just to go back again to ammonia engine, I think you mentioned about the ammonia engine, methanol, when this is going to be ready. Yes, next year will be the first, I mean in the R&D in Switzerland, WinGD, we have actually finished most of the systems validation to get the first methanol engine ready by next year, second quarter. And the one after that will be the ammonia, okay? I will not be able to cover all engine bores, but at least we started with the bore that we feel that the market actually is in demand. I mean, the 52 bore will be there, 62 bore will be there. Secondly, no engine going to be delivered, either ammonia, methanol, without making sure that the technology is very well understood and the seafarer and the end user has actually got the right and professional training for the safe and safety operation of the engine and as well as the ship. So these are the things that actually we bear in mind. It's not only the technology, it's also the people who are going to operate. The same thing we do also with the shipyards. I mean, we work very closely with the shipyard. We ensure also not only the seafarer on board the ship, but also the staff on the shipyard that also very well acquainted with the safety and the use of the new technology and the new fuel. The new fuel has a lot of challenges. Yes, we fully agree. But I would like to assure you, nothing will be delivered which we feel it's unsafe. We work very closely with the classification society when it comes to that. We ensure safety out there. I mean, we got the principle and approval for the first ammonia engine. I think this was put in a press release a couple of weeks ago. And we're very proud to say, yes, ammonia going to be the first new fuel which will fulfill the decarbonization and will get us from the transitional stage we have in now with the LNG to the zero carbon by 2050. I think I covered most of the topics here. Also, our colleagues from Aramco who've spoken about safety and training. Yes, we very glad to announce that our training centers are scattered all over the world. And recently we opened one here in the Middle East for the first time. We have in Korea, we have in China, we have in Europe, and now we have in the Middle East. So wherever our engine is manufactured, we make sure that training center is there. No engine is delivered without making sure that the right training has been also offered along with the engine to the ship staff, ship crew, and the management. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I think obviously safety is a critical thing. I'm just going to ask Mark this. I mean, I think you mentioned that the high levels of toxicity of some of the new fuels, safety's got to be a priority, and I'm sure class is playing a key role in that. But there's also a public perception, isn't there, about how these ships are going to be coming into our communities. And that's another, I wouldn't say a battle, but that's another issue that has to be addressed. Is that something that you're working on, as it were, that public perception of the transition?
It's something that we're working on, but it's a hard thing to work on. And my reflection on that, other than places, I guess, like Dubai or Singapore or certain parts of Europe, despite the fact, as already has been mentioned here, just how much trade is transported by sea, over 90%. Actually, the majority of the public, if I went into the foyer of the Atlantis here and asked them, how did this chair get here? The majority of the public wouldn't know the scale of global shipping. So we're up against just that awareness of how things are transported, and then you get into, the details. I think what is helping us, of course, has been a generational shift as well. For the first time, we're employing 5 different generations in our workforce globally. And we see a definite change in thinking in terms of how younger generations are approaching the challenges and helping us with the solutions when we talk about decarbonisation. The example I'll give, we're actively working to bring SMR nuclear reactors into the maritime ecosystem. Now, for most of us on this panel, we probably, when we mention nuclear, we think about Fukushima, we think about Chernobyl. We have a certain ingrained mindset when the word nuclear is mentioned. That ingrained mindset doesn't exist for the younger generations. They are looking at nuclear being a very viable solution, and indeed some of them even the only solution when we talk about the planet's decarbonisation aims and achieving net zero as an industry. So we haven't solved it. Our way to work on that really, as I say, is to bring in the fuel suppliers. So for ammonia, we work quite closely with some of the major ammonia suppliers, like Yara, as I mentioned, because they've been transporting this stuff for many years. They know just how toxic and what some of the risks are associated with leaking and transportation. So it's working a lot closer with the actual creators of the fuel and the suppliers of the fuel than we ever have done before.
Okay. Emil, did you want? I see you were nodding appreciatively there. Is it a comment? Do you have any thoughts on this particular issue?
Well, I think indeed we talk about technology, we talk about availability, affordability, but also, as you say, the public opinion. I would say especially in places maybe like Europe or the US or Japan for that matter, have to be taken into account seriously. And you need to have a proper communication explaining, because there is fear of explosions. I mean, we all remember the dreadful explosion in Beirut a couple of years ago, and that went all over the news agencies and all the talk shows. And there is nervousness about it, so it needs to be taken into account and it needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Hi, my name is Captain Ashraf Mabrouk, Jutal International Oman General Manager. I used to work in Port of Salalah for a while, and I would like to ask Dr. Ibrahim about the strategy of actually in Salalah or in Oman. It's a lot of challenge, mainly because of the very big coast, and actually there is a remote ports like actually in Port of Salalah, Duqm, as well as Suhar, and different management actually in each port of that. So what is the strategy actually which is ASEAN will take in order to have a proper control on these ports? Thank you.
I think that was for yourself.
Captain Ashraf, that's a difficult question, but let me just maybe give you a very short answer. ASEAN owns part of the 3 ports. So we own part of Suhar ports, part of Duqm port, and part of Salalah ports. And so basically, we are there in the each port of them 3, and we align as being from the Oman side. We always align with the counterparts, our basically partners from the different companies, and we basically make sure that whatever learning that we have, say for example from Sohar ports, we try to apply it in Duqm as well as in Salalah and vice versa. So it's basically we are there, become to connect the three ports together instead of just having them 500 kilometers away from each other.
Thank you. Well, thank you for all the questions in the room. It's made my life a lot easier. I haven't had to dig into my pool of questions. But I'll ask each of our panelists a question. I'll start with Stephen at the end. I'll start with a very, a similar question to all of you. I mean, obviously, Lilo are hoping to diversify into tankers or build up a presence in tankers. What do you think is the biggest challenge going forward, and what would you say is the biggest opportunity for you?
We do have tankers already, but yes, we're in the process of expanding our fleet in all segments and diversifying. The biggest challenge at the moment for us as a second-hand buyer of ships is the pricing. The dark trades have inflated the prices of second-hand vessels, and we won't trade those trades. So our issue is getting hold or buying tankers at the right price, which make economic sense. Opportunity-wise, markets always change. So we will see in the next couple of years opportunities for ourselves to buy more tankers and enhance our fleet profile.
Okay, thank you. And Captain Tyagi, obviously CSI, so SCI, very important company in the region. What are your strategies going forward in the tanker market? Where do you hope to be in a few years' time? What areas will you be focusing on?
See, a couple of the things. Number one, about the tanker market. Currently, we have got 31 tankers with us, and already there are plans to augment the fleet. Already decision is taken. So at this stage, we are going for the retrofit of these engines. Further, doing some purchase of second-hand vessels. This is where company is focusing. We are already diversified. We have got a bulk carriers, we have got LNG, we have got LPG, we have got offshore vessels. So we are very well diversified fleet. You just mentioned this question about the challenges. I think for us, I see as a challenge is the biggest challenge is the today uncertainty in this entire area. And then under that, availability of the new technology, experience cannot be added in one day. And we have discussed a lot about the training of our seafarers. So these are the few areas which we have identified, and these are the challenges. I'm sure as we move with the time, this uncertainty will reduce and more clarity as a ship owner will come, and we will definitely find our proper ways. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Mark, I think you've answered quite a lot of questions, so I'm finding a difficult one. But we haven't really spoken a lot about the regulatory framework. I mean, you mentioned IMO, MEPC, quite a big announcement. We've had the introduction of CII and EXI. From a class society, how do you feel the sort of new generation of IMO regulatory edicts, if that's the right word, are working, and are there any needs for any tweaks at this stage?
Let's see. I mean, we've just got a new IMO Secretary General. And in terms of edict and change, as I said before, I think for the first time we've seen that the industry is actually going ahead of regulation, certainly regulation that is coming from IMO, whether that's because people are looking to get competitive differentiation or whatever it might be. So I think as already been mentioned a number of times, we've got to work a lot closer. We have got to work and move away from this prescriptive, reactive regime that we had previously within Maritime to be much more proactive and collaborative. And I think for me with the energy transition, that's the big change that we've seen, is that it's not the IMO that have all the answers. It's not even Lloyd's Register that have all the answers or a class society that have all the answers. we are solving these problems by coming together as an industry, and we will have to continue to do that.
Okay, thank you. And Shihab Al-Rahma, I mean, DP World, you benefit from this huge global network around the world. I mean, how are you trying to leverage on that network to meet the needs of your tanker operator customers?
We are present in 200 countries, and that gives us great exposure of sharing experiences and connecting with different projects, which gives us an advantage over most of the port operators because we are spread. However, answering your question whether the shift is a challenge for us, yes, in a short term, from a commercial perspective, the huge investment, whether from ship owners or port operators or even building the terminals for storage and logistical from a logistical as a logistic platform, it makes it right now difficult for most of us to go and choose the right source of energy, comparing it to the existing rate-wise, cost-wise of operations, etc.
Okay, thanks very much. Emil, your job title is, you know, that you're the chief of both the port and the free zone. So my question really is, from a tanker perspective, you know, the liquid bulk sector, what advantages does it give you to be integrated in the way that you are in Sohar? And how are you looking to sort of take that forward in terms of what your offer is to the bunker and the tanker supply, all those areas?
Well, I think, yes, we are integrated, port and free zone, and of course there's huge synergies to be had between the two, especially if you have, for instance, the refinery and then the downstream development of products. I wouldn't say in the tanker market as such that is specifically outstanding. That has to grow still. But in the development of all these products, lubricants, value-add activities, then the two really come together, and then there's a lot of gains still to be had, and that is what we're working on. So you see much more the downstream opportunities also coming from the port, and then already also with the value-add activities supporting the port in growing.
Okay, thank you very much. And last but not least, Dr. Ibrahim, I mean, in your presentation, you asked the question, can we afford it, and where's the money coming from? It's probably a topic for a conference in its own, but I just wondered, I mean, we've heard today about the scale of the transformation that's needed. Is financing it a real issue for ship owners, do you think?
I think we need to be careful, but also on the other side, there are lots of financial institutes that they are willing to finance these sort of projects, provided that they can be proven to be green. And green financing concept is there. There's a lot of banks who are actually doing this and offering these sort of schemes. So financing, it's not a big challenge, but it's also not that easy.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think it's been a really, it's flown by really. We're actually at the 12:30 mark, and it's flown by. So, but first and foremost, can I please ask for a big round of applause for our panelists and speakers? I'm sure they've all done a fantastic job, and they've answered the questions really well, and their presentations. I think we've just got a scale, a sense of this morning of the scale of this challenge. It's not just financial, it's technical, it embraces training, it embraces the whole supply chain. key issues around shipyard capacity and the choice between retrofit, or if it is a choice, but the alternatives between retrofit and new building, the role of ports in supporting the whole infrastructure, the technology. And I think nobody's got the answers, but we know that we have to find them because this is so important for the whole industry. And I think over the next few years, the environment will continue to dominate the tanker shipping industry. And I think we've had a glimpse today of some of the key issues that leaders in this field will have to address.